What happens when the unstoppable might of Rome smashes against the unbreakable cunning of the East? Imagine the Roman Republic's greatest army, nearly 45,000 strong, led by one of the richest men in history, marching into the heart of Mesopotamia. Now, imagine that army vanishing, swallowed by the sands, its leader humiliated, and its sacred eagles captured. This isn't just a battle. It's the story of hubris, of brilliant strategy, and a catastrophe so profound it would haunt the Roman psyche for centuries. This is the story of the Battle of Carrhae. In the 1st century BCE, the Roman Republic was a superpower, but its leadership was a delicate balancing act. Power was held by 3 giants: Julius Caesar, the military genius conquering Gaul; Pompey the Great, celebrated for his victories in the East; and Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus was, by all accounts, the wealthiest man in Rome. He had everything: political influence, a vast fortune, but he lacked one thing his rivals had in spades: true military glory. While Caesar and Pompey were earning legendary status on the battlefield, Crassus felt the sting of inadequacy. He needed a war, a quick, decisive victory to cement his legacy. His gaze fell upon the Parthian Empire. He saw Parthia as an easy target, a land of barbarians just waiting to be conquered, a treasure chest to be plundered. So, without the Senate's official approval, Crassus launched an invasion. It was a move driven by personal ambition, a desperate bid for prestige to rival Caesar and Pompey. He fundamentally underestimated his enemy, believing Roman discipline and heavy infantry would steamroll whatever stood in their way. This was his first and most fatal misjudgment. The Parthian Empire was no backwater state. It was a sophisticated, powerful civilization stretching from modern-day Iran all the way to Mesopotamia. Their strength didn't lie in legions of heavily armored foot soldiers like the Romans. Instead, they had perfected a different kind of warfare, one based on mobility, psychological terror, and deadly long-range archery. Their army was commanded by a brilliant Parthian nobleman named Surena. Though he had only about 10,000 men, his force was tailor-made for the terrain. It consisted of 2 devastating components: the famous cataphracts, heavily armored cavalrymen on armored horses, essentially ancient tanks, and thousands of horse archers, masters of the powerful composite bow, capable of shooting arrows that could punch right through Roman shields and armor. Ignoring all warnings from his advisors to stick to the riverbanks of the Euphrates, Crassus made a fateful decision. He was deceived by a local Arab chieftain named Ariamnes, who was secretly working for the Parthians. Ariamnes promised a shortcut and led the massive Roman army directly into the barren, flat desert plains near a town called Carrhae. It was the perfect killing field for cavalry. As the Romans marched deeper into the trap, their morale began to crumble under the oppressive heat and relentless thirst. Surena's plan was working perfectly. He feigned retreat, luring the Romans further and further from safety, drawing the net tighter around them. In May of 53 BCE, the 2 armies finally met. Expecting a straightforward fight, Crassus formed his legions into a massive hollow square. It was a strong defensive formation, designed to protect against being surrounded, but it was also slow and cumbersome. As the Romans stood waiting, a terrifying sound began to echo across the desert. Surena's troops were pounding enormous kettle drums, a deafening rhythmic beat designed to shatter Roman nerves before a single arrow was fired. Then the storm broke. Thousands of Parthian horse archers galloped around the Roman square, just out of reach, unleashing a relentless torrent of arrows. This wasn't just a skirmish, it was a logistical masterpiece. Surena had brought thousands of camels loaded with spare arrows, creating a continuous mobile resupply system that meant the barrage never stopped. The Roman legionaries, with their heavy armor and short swords, were helpless. They couldn't charge the fast-moving archers. Every attempt to advance just left them exhausted and exposed. Seeing his men being cut down, Crassus made a desperate move. He ordered his son, Publius, to lead a charge with the Roman cavalry to drive the Parthians back. Publius and his men bravely galloped after the seemingly retreating horse archers. But it was another trap. Once they were far from the main Roman formation, the Parthians turned, surrounded them, and wiped them out. A short while later, a Parthian rider approached the Roman lines, holding a spear. Impaled on its tip was the severed head of Publius Crassus. The sight shattered the Roman commander. As his spirit broke, so did the morale of his entire army. Under the cover of darkness, the surviving, demoralized Romans managed a desperate retreat to the town of Carrhae, but they were surrounded, starving, and defeated. The next day, Surena offered to negotiate. A broken Crassus, perhaps pressured by his own mutinous troops, went to meet the Parthian general under a flag of truce. The details are murky, but the meeting descended into chaos. Crassus was killed. One gruesome, though likely exaggerated legend claims the Parthians poured molten gold down his throat, a symbolic punishment for his insatiable greed. The aftermath was a complete disaster for Rome. Of the nearly 45,000 men who marched into Parthia, an estimated 20,000 were killed and another 10,000 were captured. The rest scattered, many dying in the harsh desert. Most humiliating of all, the Parthians captured the Roman eagles, the sacred battle standards of the legions. Losing an eagle was the ultimate disgrace, a stain on Rome's honor that would not be cleansed for decades. The captured soldiers were marched deep into the Parthian Empire. Some stories suggest they became the Lost Legion, possibly fighting as mercenaries for Parthia against enemies even further east. Back in Rome, the news of the defeat sent shockwaves through the political system. Crassus was gone, and with him, the balance of power in the Triumvirate was destroyed. The rivalry between Caesar and Pompey intensified, pushing the Republic ever closer to a devastating civil war. For Parthia, the victory was a monumental achievement. Surena had proven that Rome was not invincible. Parthia cemented its status as the only power in the East capable of halting the Roman war machine. Decades later, the Emperor Augustus, through diplomacy rather than force, finally negotiated the return of the captured Roman standards. It was a moment of immense national pride, a symbolic healing of a deep wound. Crassus had marched into the desert seeking glory and a legacy to match Caesar's. Instead, he found only death and infamy. The Battle of Carrhae wasn't just a clash of armies. It was a clash of worlds. The disciplined, infantry-based power of the West versus the fluid, cavalry-centric warfare of the East. The ultimate lesson from the sands of Carrhae is timeless. That overwhelming power is useless without understanding, and the greatest enemy an empire can face is often its own arrogance. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from the past. See you next time.